Well, I don't think I've done a part D before, but I did put here they watch every penny. In a sort of typical evangelical sort of Pentecostal prosperity type cult group, obviously they're obsessed with money, they're obsessed with giving the old covenant tithe, and they watch every penny, right? And these days it's so much easier to do. They've got a list of members, they'll see who's giving, they'll know who's giving how much, and they'll know who isn't giving, and if somebody isn't giving, they'll kick them out, or they'll tell them to give, and if they don't give, oh, you don't love God, and they'll say it from behind the pulpit, you know, if you love God, you'll give, quite a short phrase, but it's like, if you love God, you'll give to God, things like that. I mean, they word it in different ways, they got their different phrases, how they con people. Um, but the thing is, they are watching every penny, but in a normal healthy church, right, they might pass a basket around, and it's not like they're watching. And the Bible even says, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is giving, kind of thing. But in a cult, they're obsessed. It's like micromanagement. Who's giving? Right, let's flatter them, and they'll use it as leverage. Well, Bob got a new job, and he's given all this, because God blessed Bob with a job. Bob is giving all this money to God, right? And that makes the other people feel guilty, So it's not like, and this is flattery, leverage, corruption. You'd expect this in the White House, but you wouldn't expect it in the right house or the house of God, kind of thing. But it's rampant. It's rampant. The Bible predicts it, so you shouldn't be surprised. Some people act so surprised. I mean, when I found out just about the level of fraud going in the cult, I thought, why the hell doesn't the government shut these groups down? This is fraud, it's abuse, it's corruption, it's just evil, and it's presenting itself as religion. But the law is very soft on religion. It's, in America, the Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of a religion. But when the religion is a scam disguised as a religion, and the Bible even tells you this, Satan masquerades as an angel of light. And it's like, it's these satanic, devious, corrupt ways of doing things. And these days it's crypto. So they'll know, they'll collect crypto as well, but usually they just want cash, and then they'll use that and they'll invest the money. And then, I mean, why would you have a group like the Mormons that are worth 300 billion and yet there's hungry Mormons? And that, they're working for pittance. You've got a very rich, top-heavy cult, right? And then you've got people who are on, next to nothing, working away to recruit people. It's bonkers. It's bonkers. It's just so not equality. And the Bible talks about the goal is equality. Love one another is like, okay, is there somebody suffering? Let's give to them. Let's look after them. But no, they will only help somebody if it serves the agenda of the cult. So some people might give a testimony. Oh, I came off drink, I came off drugs, God fixed me up. Yeah, God, it wasn't God, it was the cult, and they're only fixing you up to then use you. Because, and then it's like if you go to Alcoholics Anonymous, I know somebody who went there and he was in a bad state, right? But, they helped him out, he got off the drink, and he's doing all right. But they don't then say, right, we're going to use you and get as much money out of you, as possible, and You know, what are you not gratitude? What you're not grateful to God? Then you got to give money. Yeah, it's so devious the way they do what they do. Um, but yeah, they watch every penny. You know, so they're watching. I mean, this is hypocrisy, right? They want to know every penny you give, but you're not allowed to ask them how much money they're on. And a lot of them, they don't even know how much money they're on because they've got so much money. You know, they're living in nice places, they have nice holidays, they have a very nice life, you know. But they're not even really thinking about money because if they want something, they'll just get someone to give it to them, you know. And a lot of I mean, there's some cults out there that they're not very good with money. You know, they're more aggressive, they're more controlling, you know, the sort of prepper type cults, you know. But, you know, it is cult. I mean, again, fraud. Let's talk about multi-level marketing. You know, I got conned by a group that called iMarkets Live. I mean, they're just spending money like there's no tomorrow because there's all these people they tell this is the way to get rich. You know, it's like, I'll show you how to make £1,000. Oh, okay, how do I do that? Well, I've got a course and I'll tell you how to make £1,000. Okay then, how much is the course? It's £1,000. It's like, oh, okay. And some people are so naive, they'll give the £1,000 to go to this course. They'll give them a load of free information from cheap books. And it's like, thank you for the £1,000. Do you see the lesson? No. Where's the lesson? Well, you gave them £1,000, didn't you? You know, that's the lesson. It's like, I'll show you how to make 20 quid. Oh, go on then. All right, give me 20 quid then. Oh, is that it? Yes, that's the lesson. You know, and then just pad it out with a load of bullshit. But we live on a planet where there's so many people like this. There's so many scammers. There's so much corruption. There's so much trafficking. You know, there's so much bad stuff going on. You would assume that the governments would actually do something about it. As soon as it goes across borders, you know, and cults work across borders. Oh yes, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that know just how devious these devils are. But most people don't. Most people, you know, they're oblivious to it. They've got this mindset of, oh, most people are nice, and most people are nice. But it's these evil people, you know, that just get away with anything, you know. Anyway, that I've now run out of things to say. But you know, the topic of cults and money, you know, does get me worked up because before the cult, January 1995, I had a good job. You know, I got a degree, I had a good job, you know, productive member of society. In the cult, oh, that's what I was going to talk about, yeah, the 3 mental breakdowns. 3 mental breakdowns I had in the cult. How long have I got? I'll do another video. But for me, before the cult, I got a degree. I was raised well, you know, went to Catholic Mass, stopped going because I found it boring as anything. But, you know, left uni, got a job, starting work. You know, back in the day, unis were free. In the 90s, you got a degree for free. It just shows you how the UK has degenerated, that they can't even afford to educate people up to university level anymore. You know, the UK is going down and down and down. You know, in the 90s, it used to be good, but the UK is literally falling apart. You know, Maggie sold everything to foreign investors who want to milk the UK for every penny, you know, and they keep on doing it now, don't they? They just sell, I mean, we got the trains back in the UK, just about, but I mean, who are we using to run the trains? All this outsourcing milks the country dry. So yeah, the me before the cult, I had a job, I had a life, I didn't know that many people, that's why I was vulnerable to a cult. But, after the cult, I'll talk about the mental breakdowns, but, I can't work, I can't get a job. I'm actually thinking of trying to start my own business and with a friend, but whether that will come to anything, I've been saying that for the last 10 years. I am going to start a business, I am going to do something, but because of the mental breakdowns and the trauma and the depression and the loneliness and everything else, it's just like, oh. In fact, I mean, I actually woke up today thinking, am I going to talk about cults, or am I going to read some of the books on electronics and things and computer programming and rebrush up my skills? But sometimes you sort of just, life just collapses around you. If I was young and if I had energy, if I have kudos or whatever they call it, energy, zest for life, but all of that has been beaten out of me by life's experience. In my 50s, no income, no job, no wife, no kids, mates that are some good, some not so good. Life is shit. It really is shit. I don't have the energy to work. I've got injuries, ribs is bad, leg is bad, head is bad. I always have headaches all the time. Life is shit. I would be very happy not to wake up, just be gone. But, if life had been different, I could have kept on working, I could have gone up the ranks, maybe got a wife, had kids, 2.4 children, a BMW, and a nice house in Guildford or something. But this is the sort of damage cults do. And even if somebody's only been in a cult a few months or a year or so, it can cause massive psychological damage to the way the person views the world and reality. I know people, they've walked away from cults and they feel that they're condemned to hell, and they never get over it. They never get over it. And it's like somebody I was helping, he's only was in the cult for 6 months, and he went from somebody who was, having a good job. He did have an issue with depression, but after the cult, the depression is just 10x. He can't work, and he was working before the cult. An active member of society. Because of the mental damage the cult did to him, he's non-functional. And this is the things that cults do. They con people, they scam people, and they spit you out and they leave you for dead. And then they shun you, as if God wants nothing to do with you anymore. People, I don't really think people appreciate how bad cults are. And, obviously that's what this channel is about, just showing you how bad they are. Anyway, video 46 next. 3 mental breakdowns. That will cheer me up. Anyway, here we go.